Hi guys, it's Rob from Royal Balls. I think this is the video that most people have been waiting for, and it is a long one. I enjoyed making this one. Many of the comments have shown a lot of interest in hatchlings and how they grow, behave and develop. And of course we make comparisons with our own snakes, and your snakes change during the course of the day. What we've seen in video 1 is feeding, and you get a very strong feeding response. What we've seen in video 2 is snakes that are sleeping and do not want to be disturbed. In this video we're going to look at handling, and in each of those videos you will see a distinct change in behaviour, a distinct change in the way that the snakes are responding. So let's take a look. This is handling. Alright, I actually do have a snake here free roaming, not roaming very far. He's gone into the waste paper basket and is very preoccupied with all the scents that are in there. He's been in there for about 20 minutes and, as I say, fully preoccupied. I have not touched this guy. When I opened his tub this morning, he came flying out of the tub, and it was obvious that he wanted some roam time, so he got it. And immediately he's gone into the bin. He settled right down. His behaviour has slowed down. He's actually enjoying the free roaming without me touching him. So I'm going to shoot this segment of the video with this snake actually still free roaming in the bin. This guy actually lives in the rack up there. You can see the tub is open. I took the opportunity to refresh his tub while he was out, and I did actually just continue cleaning around him while he does his thing. So I do keep my eye on him while I clean, but basically he ignores me and I ignore him. Whilst I carry on cleaning other snakes. So whilst that guy is doing his thing in the bin, I think he's actually gone to sleep in there. He's just sitting there doing nothing. Here is one of the hatchlings, and I wanted to do a segment on handling, and this guy needs a complete refresh. He's done a poo. I talk a lot about consent-based handling, and what do I mean by consent-based handling? I've always said that snakes do not like to be handled, so how are they going to consent to being handled? Well, you've seen the free roaming videos. They're not necessarily consenting to being handled. They're consenting to coming out of the tub and doing their thing. And this would not be consent-based handling. This guy is curled up, he's asleep, it's in the morning, and what I'd be looking for in consent-based handling is snakes that are still active, that show signs that they do want to come out of the tub. And this guy is not it. So if we want to handle this guy, we are forcing ourselves upon him. I'm going to show you that that is still possible, but at the end of the day, this guy is a snake. It's not a dog. What's the difference? Well, when you bring your puppy home, it needs constant reassurance. It needs you to be close at hand. It needs physical contact in order to thrive. You've seen these guys on feeding day. They need no help from us. These guys are completely autonomous from day one, and they do not have a social structure, and in fact they prefer to be left alone in order to thrive. The best that we can hope for in our relationship with a snake is tolerance. A snake does not like to be handled. It does not need to be handled. A snake will thrive without physical interaction with us. Your puppy will not. They are completely different animals with completely different social structures. So this guy is not going to be consent-based handled. We're going to force ourselves upon him. You can see that he has started to tongue flick, but you can also see that he is huffing. You can see the heavy breathing. He is nervous. We've woken him up and he doesn't know what's going on. So we're going to strive for minimal stress interaction with this guy. We don't want a fearful response. We don't want him to be shy. We don't want him to run away. But we know that he is only tolerating handling, not actually enjoying it. So let's clean him out. I'll remove the water bowl to refresh it, just as I did yesterday, and I'm going to leave him in the tub, and he will stay in the tub. He does not want to come out. He certainly does not want to interact with me. Okay, so there's his refreshed water. And I'm going to do the same drill as yesterday. Gently reach in, and he will flinch. Not very much. And I'll put him on the lid of the tub, and hopefully he will stay there long enough to allow us to refresh his tub. Now you'll notice that he is starting to move. This is probably a flight response. He doesn't appreciate the disturbance and wants to go somewhere else, but he's not exactly panicked. And what I'm looking for in this snake here, he is still huffing, I can see that. So he is a little nervous, but he's using his tongue. He's using his tongue to sense what is going on around him. This is a good sign. This is actually free roaming of your hatchlings. You can enjoy your snakes, even if they're hatchlings, without touching them. So there is his tub refreshed, and we could just put him back into the rack. He ate a couple of days ago. This is in a morning when he wouldn't normally be active, and we have woken him up. As I say, we've forced ourselves upon him. But what I'm seeing here is a snake that is starting to relax. He's moving. He's not fearful. He's certainly not striking at me. This is good. This is all a good experience for this snake. You do not need to handle your snakes in order to enjoy them or to give them enrichment. They don't appreciate us touching. Now what I'm going to do, if I can just move the camera a little bit and show you this without spooking him. They do not like people moving around above them. But you can see he's on the edge of the table here, and he's reaching out. Now he's changed direction because I have spooked him. He's going in the opposite direction, so let me just move the camera back. So what I'm going to do is very gently pick him up in the palm of my hand, and you can see he's huffing, but he is using his tongue. He's not freaking out, and if I hold him gently for long enough, he'll start to relax, and we can do this for a few minutes. His natural response is to run away. Don't confuse this with exercise or his desire to be handled. This is a flight response, and he wants to go somewhere else, but he's not particularly stressed out about it. So we've achieved tolerance. He's not striking, he's not hiding his head, he's not fearful, he isn't very nervous, although I can see that he is a little bit nervous. He's wondering what's going on. The snake has never been handled before, not for as long as this at least. I've always handled these snakes in the same way that you saw in the video. If we do this for too long, he will quickly tire of it. This snake is bulletproof already. He's eating fantastically, has a very aggressive feeding response. This snake is ready for a new home, should I choose to do so. Is he socialised? No. Does he need to be socialised? No, absolutely not. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about how often you should handle. I do not handle my snakes very much at all, but they still respond in this way to being handled. They do not stress out, they don't freak out, and they will eventually become accustomed to being handled. Now you can see this guy is actually starting to run away. You can habituate or desensitize a snake to handling. I don't think it's a particularly good idea. They have no survival benefit from doing that, and in fact running away is their natural defense mechanism, and this isn't a particularly stressful experience. But if we repeat this every day, what we're actually doing, in scientific terms, it's called flooding. When you do something repeatedly to an animal that it doesn't want to participate in, it will eventually submit. You've broken its will. It will stop fighting, it will stop flinching, it will stop trying to do what it naturally wants to do, which is run away. And you have desensitized your snake by flooding. This is actually quite cruel, and I would not advise that. This handling session is now going to be cut short. This guy is actually starting to flinch quite a lot. He wants to get away and does not like to be restrained by me. So let's put him away. Let's take a larger snake. This one is a little bit older, a little bit bigger, and therefore a little bit more confident. Again, a snake that has not been handled, and this is not consent-based handling. This snake does not want to come out. So again, we're going to force ourselves on this snake, and this is not a great idea. This is not being kind to your snake. This is not being social with your snake. Your snake just wants to be left alone. But I'm going to show you that it is perfectly possible to handle them, although under these circumstances I do not recommend handling your snake. So I can gently pick this guy up and put him in the palm of my hand. You'll notice that his behaviour is a little bit different to the new hatchling, and that's because this guy has actually been cleaned out more times. He has been picked up more times, and he's a little more habituated to that. You can see he's using his tongue, he's flicking, and he isn't actually huffing. That's a great sign when you handle your snake, that it is not huffing. So there you go, this snake is not fearful, it's not huffing, it's not striking, it is not socialised. It is responding to me because I'm handling it gently and it does not feel threatened. Now you'll notice when I put it back into its tub, you also need to do this very gently, because if you put it back into its tub and then you pull your hands away real quick, it will flinch in fear. A sudden movement in front of its face will cause it to flinch. So let's put it back into the tub. We'll put it down very gently, and you do need to slow down, take things nice and slow. Okay, so we put it back into its tub, and now I'm just going to move my hands away very gently so it does not flinch and does not get fearful. So this is 10 o'clock at night, and what you'll notice now, a couple of days after feeding, is the hatchlings are active, and this gives an opportunity to interact with them without actually having to wake them up. Let's have a look in the other rack over here. You can see a similar thing. The babies are all at the front of the tub. There's one looking up, so they're active and probably out looking for food. They're not necessarily hungry, but they're opportunistic feeders. and they will look for food whenever the opportunity arises. So let's just have a look in one of these tubs. And yes, sure enough, this guy is no longer curled up in the corner. He's actually also active and alert. You can see that his head moved towards the camera. Let's take a look at this guy. He's awake, he's alert. And let's just see if he wants to hang out. There's no rush here. Let's give him some time to realise what's going on. There are the tongue flicks, that's what we want to see. He's using his senses rather than instinctive reactions. If we reached in immediately, we may get bitten in a feeding or a frightened response from this guy. But once he starts to suss things out, he starts to move, and you can see him actually starting to come out of the tub. So let's let him do that before we actually attempt to pick him up. Never reach straight into the tub. You will either startle the snake or you will get a feeding response and he could snap at you. But once they start to move around like this, there's much less chance of that happening. So just give the snake a moment or two to get its bearings, to realise what's going on, to recognise there's no threat, and then you can move in and pick it up. Now this is a new hatchling. They're always going to be extremely nervous. A hatchling that is a few weeks older or even a month older is going to be much more accustomed to its own background and much more aware of what is a threat and what is not a threat. And you might see the snake is actually a little more confident than this guy. So he is actually periscoping here. He's looking over the lid of the tub. He's flicking his tongue. This is all good. I can ruin all of that by moving above him. And he will flinch. Snakes do not like objects moving above them. That is what predators do. So now I'm going to have to give him a second to reset now that I've actually startled him. So let's let him reset and start to move again. He is still tongue flicking. This snake incidentally is from my Iron Man clutch. This is a pastel leopard Enchi orange dream clown with a very distinctive head stamp. It's not the super Enchi, but this is actually, for my money, the prettiest of these baby snakes. So now we've given him some opportunity to realise he's not being fed. There's no scent of prey in the room. Let's actually fish him out. Let's see if we can interact with this guy without startling him too much. So here we go, and we always come from underneath, not from above. What a fantastic snake this is, really pretty. Not freaking out, not striking, not biting, but a little more active than certainly he would be during the day. So what we need to do is just allow him time to recognise there is no threat and it is actually safe for him to move. His natural reaction is either to hide his head or to run away. So take your time, let this guy move on your hand. You don't need to push or shove him around, just take your time, be gentle. He's not huffing. He is tongue flicking to figure out what's going on. And we can ruin all of this by making a sudden movement or by moving towards him to touch him. Right now he's using me as a piece of furniture. I could be anything. That's a pretty good response. And if I move, he flinches. This is a new hatchling. He is scared of everything. Now I can put my finger underneath his head and just lift him up. Coming from underneath is not usually a problem. So here we go, he's stretching out. Fantastic. We can actually put him down on the table and let him free roam a little bit. Provided that we don't startle him or move suddenly, he will have a little bit of a roam around, get his bearings. But again, we can ruin all of that by making an aggressive move towards him. And he will flinch back at my touch. This guy is actually not too bad. He's not freaking out, he's not panicking. And remember, this guy has not been handled very much at all, except for cleaning. Awesome. We can actually pick him up. He does tense when I pick him up. But no real issues with this guy at all. Alright, I'm adding a section to this video to show you how most keepers in their videos would actually handle snakes, and the point of this is to show you, number one, that I'm not actually afraid of my snakes, but number two, to show you exactly how tolerant that they can be to forced handling. You'll see a lot of flinching, you'll see a lot of hiding the head, but you won't see actually a terrified snake. You'll just see a snake that's flinching because of insensitive handling. And we can pull these snakes around, we can show them off, and many breeders would tap their snakes on the head just to get them to stay still, which this guy does. They then pick them up and pull them around again, and you can do that with these snakes, no problem at all. They won't bite you. You do not have to handle your snakes like they're made of glass. They are a lot more resilient than we give them credit for. Admittedly, if I was to put this snake under bright lights and pull and poke it around all the time, it might go off food, but a little bit of rough handling like this during the course of making a video is probably not going to ruin this guy's day completely. It won't stop him from eating. So you can actually handle your snakes. There he goes, flinching. A lot of flinching. But that's just another example of how you can interact with your snake and it will not bite you. Don't be frightened of them. Okay, very predictable. You can bop it on the head and pull and poke it around and it will stay where it is because it'll stop fighting. It'll stop trying to run away because it knows it can't. Alright, let's do it with this big beastie boy here. Absolutely no reason to be afraid of this snake. You can pull and poke it around, you can show it off on the camera, you can describe all the genetics and how this snake looks, put it on the table, you can pull and push and poke it around, and it will not bite you. These snakes are extremely tolerant. Do not be frightened of your snake. That's not the purpose of this video. You can pick them up, and what we are saying here is that just don't do this too often, otherwise they will become shy and fearful. Just be a little bit more sensitive, but don't be afraid. There's no problem with handling these snakes. Alright guys. Alright, here's another one. This lavender girl is moving around quite a lot. You can see a lot of movement here. So let's open up the tub. And again we'll do the same thing when we take the lid off. We'll just give her a few seconds to figure out what's going on with the lid off. Okay, so we'll let her come out by herself if that's what she wants to do. There's plenty of tongue flicks here, there's no huffing. She's just figuring out what's going on, and we'll give her plenty of time to do that. We don't want to startle her by reaching straight in there, and we also don't want to generate a feed response where she mistakes us for food. Okay, so with this girl, she's moving around, so I'm just going to reach in very gently. And lift her out. Okay. As long as you do not move suddenly, I'll just let her figure out what's going on. This is not too stressful. You do not need to do this every single day. Doing this every single day is bad. That's flooding. And as they get older and more confident, you can handle them a little bit more. But as you can see, this is not a fearful snake, and I have done absolutely nothing to socialise this animal. I'm just being sympathetic to its body language and allowing it to be a snake rather than forcing myself upon it, and that makes a world of difference. They're not social animals, they do not seek out contact with us. This is for our benefit only. And the important thing here is that the snake does not get too stressed out. Okay, so that's another young hatchling, responding quite favourably to sensitive handling. So I come in the room and I'm looking for snakes which are out and about and active in the early evening so that I can shoot this segment of the handling video. And guess who is out and about? This snake knows exactly what it means when I come into the room and turn the lights on. There is no scent of prey in here, but she has learned to associate my presence with food. She knows what direction it comes from. This reminds me of the scene from Jurassic Park where the velociraptors get one over on the hunter and the hunter says, "Clever girl." One could say the same thing about this little girl in the terrarium. Clever girl. Okay, so it's early evening and the snakes have started to wake up. Now is an appropriate time to interact and handle them. We do not have to wake them up to handle them. So I'm going to call in a couple of helpers here. Now remember, these are the same snakes that I've shown in parts 1 and part 2. So none of these snakes are exactly socialised, and most of them have not been handled a great deal at all. So I'm going to bring in a complete stranger who has also not handled these particular snakes. They should not show fearful and shy behaviour, and they should not strike and bite. They will respond in exactly the same way to being handled gently as they do with me. I have not briefed or given any instructions to either of my helpers. They're just going to come in here. I'm going to select a snake at random, or they can select a snake at random, and we're going to handle it and see how that goes. As I said, this is the evening. You will see a complete character change in the snakes when they're handled at an appropriate time, as opposed to waking them up to handle them. Alright guys, so a snake at random, and this snake was actually awake. You can see that it is alert and it is tongue flicking. And we're just going to give it a second to let it understand it's not being fed. And this is my daughter, Tia, who's going to pick the snake up. There he is, coming out the bottom there. And that's Miso in the background, wanting to get in on the action. So you can see it just takes a couple of minutes for the snake to get its bearings, recognise there's no threat, and even with a complete stranger, the snake can be quite easily handled. It's not flinching, it's not biting, and it is now starting to get a little bit of confidence and starting to move around and explore. There's no huffing, there's no panting, there's no flinching, there's a lot of tongue flicking going on. This is all very positive. Let's do it with a different one, Tia. Let's do it with one that's slightly bigger and see if we can get it to move more. Good job. Okay, so here we have the freeway that you saw yesterday. And Tia's going to handle this snake, one that's slightly larger, possibly slightly more intimidating, but you can see it's moving, it's tongue flicking. We're not getting a feeding response. So there you go, Tia. You can reach in and handle it. You can turn the tub around if you like, so that the snake is pointing away. And you can just go in and pick it up. And this snake is a little bit older, a little bit more accustomed to being handled, although not by a complete stranger. And if we just give it a couple of minutes just to settle down, you'll see it will start to move around quite confidently. A complete stranger handling a snake that is hardly ever handled. Then, if you give the snake time to get its bearings, let it gain confidence, it will start to move around. There it goes. Awesome, Tia. Awesome. And I think this thing that stands out for me in this interaction is exactly how calm the snake is. It is not trying to run away. And in fact, the snake is telling us, that's enough. I want to go back in my tub. its own choice. Awesome! Alright guys, this is the same snake that I've used on several of my videos, so this thing has actually had a bit of a hammering this week. It's been handled several times. You'll all recognise this snake. This is the one that I handled earlier in the video. This is the little monster on feeding day that was very feisty. So I'll let Tia just go in there now, with no help from me, and pick up the snake. Yep, just pick it up. There you go guys, no flinching, plenty of tongue flicks, not hiding its head. Give it a couple of minutes because this is a complete stranger that is handling a snake that has hardly been handled before, definitely not socialised. What a beautiful snake this is. Every time I take this snake out of its tub, I think what a fantastic snake this is. No huffing, no panting, no flinching. The snake is doing exactly the same thing as the last one. Okay, I've had a bit of a handling session. I'm going back into my tub now. No panic, just the snake saying, I'm done. Thank you very much. Good job, Tia. Awesome! Okay, this is about as unfair as I could probably get. This is one of the cinnamon het clown snakes, the really aggressive feeders from the other day, and you will see immediately that as I take the lid off the tub, this is a feeding response. So what we need to do here is to just wait the snake out until it snaps out of feeding mode. Let's let it use its tongue. Let's let it make an adaptive conditional response rather than a reactive instinctive feeding response. And I'm going to bring the missus in to handle this snake. This is a snake that hardly ever is touched, never mind handled, and I'm going to let a complete stranger who has very rarely handled any snakes in the snake room handle this snake. Let's see what happens. Okay, so the missus is here. She's going to go in and pick up this snake. Very rarely handled. Just go in and pick it up.
Right to the water. Let me see.
Okay, so we're looking at a non-socialised snake being handled by a complete stranger who does not normally handle snakes. No flinching, no hiding the head, no huffing. The snake does take a second or two to assess what's going on, realise there's no threat, and starts to move. So if you just give the snake time to assess what's going on, realise there's no threat, the snake will be cautious. All snakes are. Remember, this snake on feeding day was an absolute beast. Cleaning day, it just wants to sleep. Several days after feeding, no scent of prey in the room, and the snake is active because it's already woken up. This is a perfect time to interact with the snake on its terms, not ours. The snake does not enjoy this, it does not seek it out, but it tolerates it. You can see the snake behaving exactly the same way as it did with my daughter. Its own tub is on the table. This is home, and the snake is saying, okay, I'm not scared, I'm not panicking, but I'm going home. How awesome is that? If we wish to do so, this would be a perfect opportunity to allow this snake to do some free roaming without us touching it. It's quite obvious the snake does not really enjoy being touched, but it does enjoy being out and about. Good job, baby.
One snake. Yo.
Good job, Pepper. Good job, snake. So, you can handle your snakes, but is it the right thing to do? Do they actually enjoy it? Should we make our best efforts to try to socialize our snakes? Is it good for them? Are we actually harming them? Here is a picture of a couple of cats. They clearly enjoy interacting with each other, and they clearly enjoy interacting with us. They actively seek it out. Our snakes do not. So I have an alternative for you, one that shows your snake in a far better light than handling it yourself ever could. Take a look. If you ever get a chance to do this with your snakes, guys, just let them free roam without touching them. It's absolutely fascinating. Even if you've only got 5 minutes to watch your snakes doing this. Okay guys, so that is handling. I've tried to show it from every different perspective and under a variety of different circumstances, some of them favourable, some of them otherwise, some of the snake's choice and some that are a little bit forced. No reason to be afraid of your snakes, no reason not to handle your snakes. All I'm showing is that they do not need to be handled necessarily in order to submit to it. This girl here certainly does not want me to handle her, but for the sake of this video, it's a good illustration of what many people think handling is all about. So in the next video we're going to look at free roaming, which is an opportunity for your snakes to do their own thing without you actually touching them. So jump down in the comments below and have at it, guys. Let's have that discussion on handling. Let's try and decide whether it's good or bad and under what circumstances. Let's have that conversation. Let's talk about when we think we should or should not subject our snakes to handling, whether it's forced or voluntary. This girl here is actually very, very tolerant. I'm not scared she's going to bite me. I'm not sure she's enjoying the experience, but she's not being shy and fearful, so this is doing her no harm. This is actually ARP's signature snake, the Calico Bumblebee. Very reduced and clean. This is a female and she is not quite up to breeding size yet, although she is up to breeding age. She has been a slightly fussy eater. Maybe that's because I haven't been showing her enough love. And there she is, running away into an open tub in the background. That's just perfect. This is not her tub. This is the tub of a male snake that's currently paired up with another snake somewhere else. But it's a highly convenient hiding space for her. These things are not stupid. So let me rescue her and put her back into her own tub. I think she's telling me, leave me alone. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.